When you know who you are, you know what you're supposed to do, then it's just a matter of sharing it with the world and showing up to where you're supposed to be. Your mess becomes your message. The cracks in my armor became something I wasn't embarrassed of because they didn't define who I was. So I'm going to go share them with other people because there's someone just like me right now who is feeling like I felt a couple of years ago and is seeing no way out. And they need someone to say that I can see the drift.
Welcome to the Tango Tango podcast. Real, raw, and unfiltered conversations with veterans and those who support them. Tune in, be inspired, and walk away stronger.
Welcome to the Tango Tango podcast. Real veterans, real stories. Thank you, Supply Chain Now, Scott and Amanda, for letting me do this. And I have a tremendous guest today, Adam Jones. So Adam is equipping military leaders and veterans to break free from silent struggles and build resilience and high-performing cultures. And he's the author of Weapons of Mass Destruction and founder of Kingdom Operatives. He's a wonderful family man, Christ-driven, Army veteran, UH-60 pilot, works in corporate America. We are going to dig into all that, but most of all, we're just going to hear Adam's story. Adam, welcome to the Tango Tango podcast.
What's up, Lloyd? Hey, man. Glad to be here. Heads up for you super quick. It was Weapons of Mass Deception. It'd be crazy if I wrote a book called Weapons of Mass Destruction. That'd be next level, but...
I did totally screw that up, but you know what? This is Tango Tango. It's unedited,
hey, man.
So we're going to leave that in. So so mass deception. So Adam is one of the few people that I know that is as busy as me. He is got his nose down and just making a lot of great things happen. And I got to tell folks, first of all, that Adam has been on my other podcast I do, The Landing Zone, which is a veteran podcast that really help veterans find their next careers and hopefully in the UPS. And Adam had a compelling story. I don't even remember how we got connected, but it was a really compelling story. It was a great podcast. And when I decided to start Tango Tango, I purposely was like, I'm not going to have any crossover guests. And my new bride, Sarah, is such a big Adam Jones fan. She put the bug in my ear, and I just thought to myself, you're right. He's got such a good story, and that's what Tango Tango is about. It's such a great story, and this has no constraints. Adam, we could be here for 6 hours, right? And we have no scripts, unlike the other podcasts. So I'm really very interested in the digging in your story. And first of all, we're going to start where'd you grow up at, Adam?
So grew up in Nazareth, Pennsylvania, which is like near north of Philly area, north of Philly.
Was Mario Andretti from Nazareth, Pennsylvania?
Yeah. Wow, good for you. Mario Andretti was like a minute and a half walk away from where I grew up. So right up.
Oh, no way. I'm a huge Mario Andretti fan. Yeah, so
the whole
very, very
family,
cool.
The whole Andretti family's there. That is so wild that you thought of saying that. Yes, yeah, Mario Andretti, Michael Andretti. Then there was one other. All these just giant mansions. I didn't have a mansion. We didn't grow up in that, but we were right next to them.
Oh, that is really cool. And what did you like doing growing up? Did you play football? Were you a hunter or fisher? What did you like doing?
First and foremost, loved trick-or-treating at Mario Andretti's. Because people were with the giant king-size bar. So that was really cool. So got to start with that.
Good for you, Mario. I'm even a bigger fan now. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it was just this line, like hundreds of people just in a line waiting for the you to get to the door, and then you go inside, and then you get the big king-size bar. It was really cool. Other than that, I was a lacrosse player. I was pretty big into martial arts from like 5th grade until high school. So I ended up being like a karate instructor and stuff. Then I switched to lacrosse. So if I get it in the right order, that's kind of how it worked. And then Civil Air Patrol at 12 years old until graduating high school. So doing search and rescue and flying and stuff like that. And it's probably the majority of it.
Yeah, I imagine you were pretty decent, a high school student, and you found your way to college. Where'd you go to college at?
Yeah, so I only had one goal, like since I was 7 or something, was want to be a Black Hawk pilot in the Army. So I would say it was probably a little bit easy to parent me because my goal was so honed in. My parents were like, we didn't really have to do much because that's what he always wanted. So I obviously had to do a lot of things to get there, like becoming an officer and all that, and going to college. I was the first kid in my family to go to college. Ever in my immediate chain, there was no one who did that. But if that's what it takes to be a pilot, and an Army officer, then okay, let's go do that. So that was kind of that. And then college was at Penn State.
Let me dig into that a little bit. I have a little familiar student story, but I was a pretty decent kid, but I was a terrible student. But my dad was stationed in Darmstadt, Germany, which was on the flight path, the Rhine-Main Air Base. And I used to see the cargo planes fly over. And I was like, hey, one day I want to do that. And I ended up being a loadmaster flying on those exact same cargo planes. Well, that were actually much, much older than I was. And then I eventually learned how to be a good student and went to college. But why the Black Hawk? Was it a movie, a book?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's usually something a little bit sexier, honestly.
Yeah. That's not cool. To me, man, Black Hawk was the coolest thing ever. Black Hawk Down is what made me want to fly those. And then let me think what else. I started flying at 12, like fixed wing, Cessnas and stuff, but I never was interested in anything fixed wing. I thought a helicopter is so cool that it could just stop wherever it wants and land, or do like a hoist and all that kind of stuff. It can go backwards. That was the kind of stuff to me, like, wow, I love the idea of a helicopter.
And you made it happen. So you went to Penn State. Were you in the ROTC or anything in Penn State?
Yeah, ROTC, and then my major was security and risk analysis. Initially, it was criminal justice, and then what ended up happening was my sophomore year, I heard about this major called SRA, security risk analysis, and I was like, that sounds pretty cool, and I started learning about it on campus, and I said, what is it? And they were like, it's for people who want to usually go in the intel world, and you're mitigating, terrorist attacks, and you're learning how to do that in college. You're not really doing it, but you're learning how to do it. You're learning how to assess situations like that. And I thought that was so exciting to me that I switched from an active duty Army scholarship to an Army National Guard scholarship, because I thought, wait a minute, I could do both. I could become a pilot in the Army, and then, in the Guard life as an aviator, I mean, you're still flying usually once or twice a week. It's not 1 week in a month. There's no way you would be able to do that. So I thought, okay, I could still do that, and I could do the civilian world. And for me, that's what ended up happening, right? I graduated from Penn State, and I immediately got a job working at Booz Allen Hamilton as a senior management consultant. Well, actually, just a consultant originally, and then I worked my way up. But as a consultant, working with the Air Force and with Undersecretary of Defense, while also being in the Army National Guard. But I think you and I chatted about this before, but I didn't get aviation. That was the thing that blew my mind. I did all of that for 2 reasons. One was, okay, I get the best of both worlds. But the main reason was, if I go Army National Guard, my time in service starts now while in college, and I can already find a unit that is going to bring on aviators and guarantee my slot. That's what I thought. And I did. I found a unit. It was in Pennsylvania. My job that I ended up getting, and your full-time job really matters, was in DC. And it was a cool job, right away you're working with Pentagon and stuff. You're interfacing with some pretty high-profile clients, but at the same point, you're living in DC. So how are you going to fly in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania? How are you going to make that happen once or twice a week? And that's always been a challenge for them. So it crushed me, because basically they were like, hey, we were moving forward with this with you, but you got a job in DC, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. We're just not going to give you a flight slot for Pennsylvania Guard. You're in the DC Guard now. That's where you need to head, right? And I wasn't in it yet, but they were like, you got to go find someone there. And by the time I did, it was as an MP. So it was wild, man, to get military police. After doing all of that, my whole life was all about that one thing, and I didn't get the one thing. But I'm glad it worked out this way, because I think when you and I chatted, I talked about how in DC is where I ran into my wife again, who I met at Penn State. And then at that point we started dating, and now we've been married for over 11 years. So it's really cool how it all worked out, because once I met her, then I had the opportunity to kind of continue to advocate for like the reason I wanted to be an aviator in the first place. And then the doors opened.
Yeah, Adam and I were talking earlier before we went live here that sometimes God has a different plan for us. And we don't often understand that plan, but sometimes when we just shut up and listen, and I think Adam, God had a different plan from you. And then you went on to eventually become a pilot, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, this whole thing is a different plan than I could have imagined. That's for sure. Like I'll speak to organizations like Zoom and Salesforce and, SkillBridge programs, United States military, all on, the topic of weapons of mass deception. And one thing I point out is like, look, I never in my life saw me doing this type of work. I thought I'd still be flying helicopters. Okay. So this isn't necessarily something I pursued, but it's a sense of responsibility to pay it forward. And I really feel that way, man. Like you and I were talking about like feeling tired and energy levels every once in a while, but like this stuff always brings me energy. It doesn't deplete me. And I think it's because I feel such a sense of responsibility of like, dude, I wish someone would have shared with me what almost cost me my marriage and my life, and I wish, and maybe if they would have shared it, maybe I wasn't ready for it. Who knows? But we got to do that. So I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but it's part of, the whole, what the plan is.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Those struggles brought character, and it also allowed you to do this bigger thing. I mean, you impacted, a fair amount of people in the Army as an MP and then as a pilot, but you are changing the stars now for people, Adam. And unfortunately, you had to go through some really gnarly stuff in order for you to do that. And but I think it was all part of the plan. But before we get to that gnarly stuff, let's talk about, you're an MP, you got this full-time busy job. How did you eventually make it to your goal? Your goal, you did your goal, you got to fly Blackhawks. Yeah. Tell me about that story.
Yeah, it is cool. So in DC, I ended up going on active orders. So for awareness, I was in for 10 years in the service, and DD 214, right, comes out and says, I think it was 7 years of active out of those 10 years. So a lot of my time was active, and it wasn't, even that was not something I could have planned. It's not a typical story. Most of my active time, it was all like government agencies and stuff. So I ended up doing a stint through the DC National Guard counter-drug program, working with Interpol. And when I was working there as an analyst, I started to, make some really good friendships and relationships. And I always just thought, hey, I'm just going to do the best I can right now with what I have. I'm going to try to make the teams I'm on better. Because, when you're doing something like that, that's your full-time job, is like this assignment to an agency. But your guard part-time life is still, I'm a platoon leader as a military police officer. And those two worlds introduced me to some leaders who were aviators. And I even made sure my company commander always knew, hey, I really want to be an Army aviation officer. Like, I want to be a pilot. Like, I think when you can show someone that level of commitment, like I started flying at 12 for this, and I'm not doing it anymore. And like, that doesn't feel right. But eventually I got to this one major who I knew he was like a key aviator in DC, and he's also the head of counter-drug. So what a good combo, right? And I let him know, obviously, that this is what I wanted. And he said, I'm gonna make an introduction for you to the head of the state, which is called the State Aviation Officer. And you can go ahead and maybe you can chat with him real quick. So I ended up getting to chat with him, and we're on the drill floor, about to walk across the drill floor, right? From one side to the other, just like just walk across the gymnasium in a way, for anyone who's listening who's not military. And as I'm doing that, I said, hey, sir, real quick, my name is Lieutenant Jones. I work with Major Hunter. By the way, Major Hunter is now the general of Maryland, which is so cool. And he basically says, hey, let me back up. I introduced myself and I said, I know you're looking for new pilots for DC. You have a flight board coming up. I would like to be considered for it. And at first, the colonel, he says, if you want to be a pilot, why aren't you a pilot right now? Off real strong. Why are you an MP if that's what you wanted? And I said, hey, I can explain it. And he said, okay, I'm going to walk from this end of the drill floor to that end. And when I'm done walking, you're done talking. So not necessarily human-centered leadership. I had to convince this guy in 30 seconds, why me? And I feel like I probably just blacked out. I don't know if you ever saw Old School, like Frank the Tank or anything, but I feel like I just blacked out. Remember when he was interviewing at the end, a panel or whatever? That was so funny. So I felt like I just blacked out. And it was so much passion and commitment of my whole life. These are the things I did to prepare for that. I soloed at 16 years old, all those different things. And I'm not flying, and it's not by my own choice. It's by the fact that I have a job in DC, and then Pennsylvania didn't want to send me to flight school anymore. And, states are really specific with that stuff too, because they don't want, if Pennsylvania uses their budget and then all you do is end up leaving and giving someone else a free pilot, that's a big deal, right? So they don't want to play that game. So anyway, so he said, all right, your interview's next week. And it was I don't know, a week away or something. And what's good is I already did all the process to become a pilot once. So I had a lot of the paperwork already. I had the flight physical. I just needed to get it updated. I already got LASIK. All these different things were done. So yeah, then eventually I'm interviewing, and then I convinced the board, to select me. And then I got a 4-day notice of a shortfall, right? Which is no notice, you're going to flight school. So you start in 4 days.
Let's go back to the motions of that. When did we receive that? What was that like? Holy cow.
Yeah. Well, I was driving at the time, and I got the call from the colonel, and he said, you told me you would take a shortfall, right? This is the same guy who gave me 30 seconds to convince him. And I said, absolutely, sir. Yep. And he said, all right, are you sitting down right now? And I said, well, I'm driving, but I'm okay. And he said, okay, a flight slot just opened up and you start in 4 days. And when I heard that, I was like, holy crap, we're going to do this. No way, let's go. I can't believe it. And the fact that I just moved up in the line by so much, that's something that God can do, right? God, no time is lost with the Lord. God can accelerate. He can move the chess pieces around in ways that you never saw possible. So I was originally on a 2.5 year wait list, dude. And in 1 month, I'm finding out in 4 days you start. 1 month after interview, So that was crazy. And, I go home and tell my wife, Jess, the news. And I say, hey, how we want to go to flight school? She's like, yeah. I said, all right, well, we start in 4 days. And she's like, what? I was like, I got accepted. We're moving to Alabama. When are we moving to Alabama? In 24 hours, probably, It's crazy. And that started our adventure, man. We got to live such an amazing adventure.
Let's go back. Let's talk a little bit about that. I was married to a military spouse before she passed away after 34 years of marriage. And sometimes when you break that news, it's well received. Sometimes when you break the news, it's not well received. So what was her attitude like when you told her we're moving to Alabama in 24 hours?
Honestly, because this was the first big military moment for her, right? It was all fresh. We were young, 23 years old. It was just all we have is our puppy. Okay, let's go, And then she, told her work, and then we were on our way in a car. We each took our cars, loaded it up as much as we could, had the new dog, and left everything else, and waited for the traditional household goods shipment to eventually take over. A couple months later, get our stuff, But until then, we're just going to take some clothes with us and whatever else we can fit. So then we moved down there and, immediately had a house on base, and we had an air mattress. We bought 2 lawn chairs, Tommy Bahama lawn chairs. And then we had our dog and our clothes, and that was it, man. That was all our furniture. It was two Tommy Bahama lawn chairs in the house, like as if they're the furniture, and then the air mattress. But I would say, Jess was like, I don't even know what to think. That sounds exciting. Let's go do that. And it really did start like such an adventure. And I think for her, it gave her such fast exposure to that military life. Because sometimes with like Guard or reserves, you're a little bit more, at least staying in a location, staying in a state or something like that. Like you might move around every once in a while, but that was a big one for us. We ended up moving a ton, to be honest, but that was the one that was big.
Very cool. Yeah. My late wife and I when we got married, very young, 18. Yeah. And our first apartment, we had 2 lawn chairs. We leased a TV, and we had a waterbed.
No, what?
So I'm a little bit older than you. We got married in 87. Okay. So waterbeds were the big thing.
Yeah.
But you know what? Those times when you didn't have nothing made you really thankful for the times when you had something.
Yeah. And when you go through survival school, SEER school, they teach you to visualize yourself in your home, right? And like walk yourself through your house and take yourself out of where you are and put yourself somewhere else. And I'm thinking, I can't see anything. All I see is lawn chairs and empty hallways, That's great.
Stop hitting me.
Yeah, this is not like work for me. There's nothing to visualize. I see my dog and I see some children,
Yeah, that's awesome.
When I got to school, the house was totally done. Yeah. At that point, you're out of contact for weeks, and I come back and boom. There's a whole house, all set up.
Yeah, been there, done that as well. So you're in pilot training. You learn how to fly the Black Hawk. Was it everything that you thought it would be?
Yeah, eventually. You think you want it so bad, so that means you're going to be good at it. And it didn't come natural to me. I tend to be someone who's very methodical, structured. Part of flying, a Black Hawk at least is more of a feel too, right? And like feeling it out and being fully there and knowing how to respond, because it's always going to be different. And part of me, I want like, when this happens, do this, but it's not always that way. Very rarely is it that way. So I had to learn how to be more present with the aircraft and like be in that seat and enjoy the flight, or command the aircraft rather than just reacting to everything. So I was surprised by how hard it was for me for a little while, but eventually it all came together for sure. I had a really cool instructor pilot who was like, "Hey man, dude, you got to think like Yoda here." And I was like, "All right, what do you mean?" And he's like, because I was saying, "Man, I'm trying to hover, And he goes, "Do or do not, there is no try, And he said, "You can't try to hover. You either hover or you don't, So that was good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you end up flying a Black Hawk for 3.5 years. So that, which I could tell, did I get that right?
We think here. So I started flying in 2024, and then I stopped flying. Ouch, that did not make any sense. 2014. And then I stopped in 2020.
Yeah.
So just about 6. Yeah.
Okay, 6 years. So why the exit?
I mean, I think I thought, well, dude, like, I just knew I was supposed to get out, like I had this immediate piece of a decision, which was I have to get out of the military. And I don't think I really knew why yet. I just knew I was, for me with my faith with the Lord, I felt like I was just being instructed to. And I always had so much respect for people who just listen to God over anyone else. Yeah. And to me, I'm not hurting anyone by getting out, right? So there's nothing morally or ethically wrong with that. It was more of a trust. And, Jess was like, "I'm not making this decision for you. You have to choose this, if that's what you really want." And I think I thought it was just going to be what was supposed to happen, even though it's not necessarily what I wanted. I would have wanted to just keep flying and all that. But we talked before about how like things were off. Our house was not a home of peace. Things were out of balance. I'm a very driven person, and I was so focused on my soldiers and the mission and flying and all these things. Eventually, without realizing it, I'm giving my wife and my firstborn daughter my leftovers, and seeing like, nah, that's not what I wanted though. That's not what I would intend for them. So what's happening to me? And I just felt like I could never be present. And even though I had everything I ever wanted, something was still missing, and I was like empty. And a broken-hearted leader breaks more hearts, right? If you're hurting, it's not a time to put yourself in more positions of leadership. It's a time to go get healthy and healed. And I think God's most precious resource is people. So you're not going to be trusted with more people. And if you are, should you be? So those are the kind of things I was processing. And like I said, I had this like peace, even though everything else there was no peace. There was peace inside about a thought, which was like, I have to start the process of getting out.
And when you got out, it didn't instantly fix it, did it?
No, that was what's really hard for me to comprehend. And also for, I think, other people, I'm trying to warn them, if there's something off right now in your life, like if you are hurting, if you feel empty, if you feel like you're going to explode all the time, I know you think getting out will get it out, but that's not how this works. You could actually be in the military, stay in the military, work on this, and continue to stay in and have a great life. And you could have peace inside and be surrounded by pressure and chaos, and you'll be okay. I really believe that. For me, I had to get out in order to finally wake up. But what surprised me was I thought the answer was getting out. That's why my picture when I was done, like my last day as a captain in the Army and stuff, I'm smiling, man. I'm stoked. I'm thinking, this is it. I'm going to be a present father and husband. And, I didn't realize that availability is what I was going to give them. Presence is a whole different thing. Availability does not equal presence. And for me, I was just going to be available. I was going to be there. But I found out in the upcoming months that mentally I wasn't there. And I was super pissed and frustrated because I'm like, what the heck, man? I did everything I didn't want to do to repair this family and listen to God, and it's not getting better. Like that's how I was angry, man. I look in the mirror and I'd hate the guy looking back. I'd be annoyed from neighbors and all their conversations. Like small talk has always been hard for me. It's improved a lot because I don't really see it as small talk anymore. I see it as people just trying to get to know each other, right? But in the past, it was like, what are we talking about? I can't pretend to care. And I just remember feeling so irritated. I still felt stressed. And then, finding out from my wife that like, she felt like I wasn't there. And I'm thinking, no, this is not how the story goes. That is not fair to me at all. What do you mean I'm not here? I'm right in front of you. I'm here right now. I'm wearing civilian clothes. I'm no longer a Black Hawk pilot. I'm no longer a captain. I have a stupid corporate job. This is how I felt back then, right? I have this job that pays me more, but I feel less valuable. And no one gets me. And you're telling me this isn't enough for you? I got nothing left to give.
So tell me what that anger did to you.
Well, I could hide it if I was on a call with someone. I could hide it. Immediately, I went right into business because I always knew, like, man, I really want to like build something that lasts. I want to build teams. I want to build up people. So I immediately started like executive coaching and stuff. And I had a couple clients, and I could always be fine for them, or for a podcast, I'd be okay. But that takes energy to hold that together. So you're actually draining yourself more. Like at least right now, as you and I are talking, I'm fully here and I'm fully me. I'm not draining myself by pretending I'm someone else. And I think that's a key point for a lot of people to know. But like for me, the anger started to play out into my actions. So I'm angry, and now without meaning it, I'm throwing something. Without meaning it, I'm slamming the door. Without intending it, I'm being short with my tone with, I don't know, my wife or daughter or something, right? Like I was not in a good space at all. And eventually I would find that I felt like this is how identity is like one of the most powerful forces in the world. It really is. Like you will do everything to defend who you see yourself as. Like people fight and give everything they have to defend this is who I am based on what I understand about myself right now. If you get that wrong, that's not a good thing. And I got that wrong. But I would say in the deepest part of even you and I, Lloyd, is like we are warriors and we are protectors. And that identity, without recognizing it, see, I recognize it now, but back then I didn't get it. I think because I was a protector and someone who was willing to fight, I realized that I wasn't protecting. I needed to protect my wife from me. I needed to protect my daughter from me because I was the threat. Not that I would ever hurt them, but I'm not helping them. Life is not better because of me in your life. It's probably you're more frustrated, you're more tired, you're constantly having to clean up after me because I forgot something. I'm draining you. So if I'm hurting you, maybe the best thing I can do is leave you. Maybe I will actually help you. Maybe the most selfless thing I can do is leave, and it'll give you a better life.
So what was the low point that drove you to seek help?
Those like inner wrestlings and stuff, they got pretty loud, and it'd be on and off, right? I wasn't like that every day, but some days I was. And that I think that's where I talk about how we all drift in life, and if you do hard things, you're going to drift. Well, I'm drifting a little bit more each time, just a little bit more. Maybe sometimes it's stable, then the drift continues. Maybe we're okay for a bit, but we're going to keep drifting in that wrong direction. And I didn't recognize it for what it was, but I would eventually maybe go pick up groceries or something like that, right? Or it's something that requires me to leave the house. A couple times I probably forced myself out of the house, but I just get in my car and play like really loud, angry music and start hitting the gas and driving really aggressive on different roads, like swerving and thinking like those same destructive thoughts of like maybe things would be better off without me, and putting myself in a position where like my heart's racing, like I'm feeling alive, I'm feeling like the risk, feeling that adrenaline. And then sometimes you think like, okay, I'm not going to maybe I don't take my foot off the gas as fast this time. Maybe I don't hit the brakes. Maybe I wait a little bit longer. And that's why I always say it's like, dude, I didn't really have like suicidal thoughts, but I did suicidal things. Mm-hmm. Like I wasn't like trying to take myself out other than those moments and the way I did that. To me, leaving wasn't like, killing myself. It was like, I'll just walk out of the house and I'll go serve the world because I can't figure out my own home. Like I'll give everyone else what I can give them because I seem to be appreciated out there. But my house, I lost this one,
Wow. So what drove you to give help?
Well, again, I didn't know it. I didn't know how serious it was. Someone else did, right? Yeah. Plain and simple. I started building a couple relationships that I felt like God literally placed into my life for even to this point. These people are still in my life. A guy named David and a guy named Israel. And David started to share with me, different perspectives on the way I was seeing my life and seeing purpose. I'm like thinking purpose was something I have to go do rather than it's already here. Seeing a mission as like right here, right now, rather than something I have to, go join up for. Seeing my family as part of equipping me, and also I'm there for them. So like David started working with me, and then Israel, these are both two, men of faith. Israel was in his 60s, had a whole lot of money at one point, and lost it. And he basically started to work with me and was like, hey, look, like, I'm happier than I ever have been my whole life. And I had success. And he said, and you had success too. And it's hard to not see yourself just as like the Black Hawk pilot and those things. But I think you're going to have to figure out who you are without any of that. And one thing he said to me that I thought was really interesting, like it was just like a meeting just like this, right? We're just virtual, getting to know each other. And he said, Adam, I really like you. He said, you seem like a really cool guy, like a really good guy. And I remember hearing good guy and it like made me tear up because I was thinking, well, he doesn't know that I just got in an argument with my wife right before this call. And again, I wasn't like this terrible person screaming at my wife. We were yelling at each other. You see what I'm saying? Like our house was a house of tension. We were not on the same page. But I can't change her. I can only change me. The only thing I can change is my attitude and my actions, not someone else's. So I always make this story very specific about the things I could control. And then it started to change her too. So anyway, so Israel goes, I like you, man. I think you're a really good guy. That made me tear up a little bit. By the way, I wasn't someone who would tear up. And then he said, you also seem like nervous. And I thought like, nervous? And then immediately my first thought was, what am I getting wrong? Like, wait, I'm not showing the right thing to this person. He's seeing nervous. I don't want him to see nervous, So that mask was no longer working with him. And he said, yeah, it seems like you're not sure how to sit sometimes, or, like, oh, ha, ha, ha. Like you're trying to be here, but, you're not fully here. And he basically just pointed out, like, he said, I think you have soul damage. And I was like, what is soul damage? And it was what I had. It was deep darkness and wounds from different areas of my life that I wasn't dealing with, and I was suppressing them without recognizing that the stuff I was suppressing was spreading and hurting other people. So he did it, man. He called out my drift, just like a crew chief does. Same thing. Like, dude, you're not okay. And I'm like, what? I'm not okay? How do you know I'm not okay? Well, it was like he was just reading the mail.
Well, it's one thing to be told you're not okay. It's another thing to have courage to go get help. So what drove you to seek help? And then what did that help look like?
Well, I could tell that he was healthy. So if he has it, maybe he can give it to me. Like this all ties back to mentorship and community, that the right community, the right mentorship, the right mindsets. So I was taught like a performance mindset my whole life. Probably you were too, man. It's like, all right, I'm going to go do this thing and then people will like me because I did this thing well. And then I don't want to stop doing this thing, because if I do, then people won't want me here anymore. And when I do this, people like me and they appreciate me and I belong. That's a performance mindset. You're determining your value and your identity based on what you do and how well you do it. And that was me. And what he started to expose me to was like, you can just be, and you can start to work through what you've been suppressing and properly, like he would always use the term govern. You could properly govern yourself and your emotions. And you don't do that by holding them in. You do it by letting them out the right way. And I began to see there were certain people in my life who maybe drove me to feel I was only as good as my performance. And those type of things just kind of compounded, right? To where eventually I felt like that was just how I saw myself too. So
you started making those foundational changes. How quickly did it start helping? Not only in your life, but how quickly did it start repairing your family?
Like for me, man, I felt like anytime I did something wrong that God left me, that was my mindset. Like if I fell short in any area, like let's say it was anger, right? And not acting perfect. I'm alone for a little while until God's ready to come back and hang out with me. That's kind of how I felt. And I had to start to change that and be more convicted by what he says, not what I think. What he says is, I'll never leave you. So these type of things, I just started to finally believe. I started to learn about the kingdom compared to religion and how man created religion, but God has a kingdom, and that kingdom is his will and his way of life. And we're part of it. We're part of the design for this world, right? To help make it better, to bring it into order, to take care of things and make them better, multiplying and stewarding, like all that stuff started to be revealed to me. And I remember thinking, man, I haven't noticed any of this before. I thought I had to go get this stuff. I'm already full. I started to believe eventually that like, it took a long time, man, but eventually it's like, wait, I'm already full because I'm with the Lord and he's full. So like, so am I. I don't need to go get anything to be better or be more full. I have to realize what I already have. And there was just so many steps to my mentorship journey. So many. There was consistent calls like this. There was journaling. I would journal in the morning and write, all right, Lord, what do you want to say to me today? And then I would just start writing. There was a pursuit of being with God in the morning through scripture and just sitting and reading and not trying to get it done fast, but just enjoying the process of reading. And at first, man, it made things worse in my home because now Adam's changing. Like, who is this guy? I just wanted my husband to be present and like enjoyable. I don't want him to be a whole different person.
Wow, that's deep and heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Wow. How in the world did you work through that?
I was warned again, and look, like we're paying it forward. I mentor people one-on-one now, just like he mentored me. I have a community to help people just like a community helped me, because that's the stuff I needed. You don't correct the drift by yourself. You don't even see the drift by yourself.
Yeah, and let's go back. Let's go back. So let's see, because I want to dig into this.
Okay.
So you're making these foundational changes, and now your wife is like, holy cow, you're changing into not the person I married, or not the person.
Right.
So
100%. It's crazy.
How in the world did you work through that?
Well, again, I'm like, what the heck, dude? I'm just trying to do the right thing. I'm trying to like be here for you and be better. And you're saying, Chin, this isn't enough. I was just like, I'm so tired. But the big thing was Israel warned me, and he said, hey, you're going to have courage, because the way you see performance is the way you also see your house. You think I have to perform for Jess over and over and over, and perform as a father. And when I underperform, like shame, right? And that's what's happening to you as well. And even Jess is going, you're a performer. You can perform. You are a high performer. I have seen you do it, and that's how you have presented yourself to her. And you're going to have to present yourself as a whole new person and say that, look, I'm not going to get it all right anymore, but I am going to start to grow. And what he told me, and what I tell everyone now, is I say, look, you're going to have to ask your wife or husband or kids or whoever it is, right? For me, it was my wife, permission to change. So I said, hey, like, I know this is probably going to get maybe weird for you, because you're thinking, well, you used to dress this way, now you're dressing this way. You used to do this in the morning, now you're doing this in the morning. Like, what's going on? And he told me to just say, like, just ask her for patience. Can you just give me some patience as I try to grow and figure this out? Because I believe the person you're going to meet next, you're going to like even more. And that's what I had to believe, is a whole new person was going to show up in my house soon.
Did she figure that out?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. And how long did that take, and what did that look like?
Yeah, this stuff took like probably a good year and a half of just solid focus, right? I would say success is much more about subtraction than addition. People always want to know, what else do I need to do? It's like, what do you need to stop doing? What do you need to remove? What space do you need to create? I think that's the harder question, and we have to start with that. So I had to shut down a business. I had to simplify life. I had to step away from a church role, all these different things that are good things. These are good things. These are about helping people, making a difference, impacting. Yeah, but I got to get this right first. And this is easier for me. It's easier for me to go help these people. This is hard. And I think a lot of military people could agree that that's the hard thing, man. Like getting my home all on the same page and stuff. Like I can go perform for the military, but like when I come home, this is hard to figure out. Maybe it's easier to just stay a little bit later, right? So for me, I ran into those big shifts. And, like I said, Jess saw change and was really scared because she was like, what are you doing? Where are you going now? You're going to go travel to California? Why are you going to California when like our whole life is falling apart? I'm like, well, I think there's an event that I need to be at. It was just like a ministry event, but it was one that I felt like God was saying go to. And I said, I think it's going to help us. And it did, dude, I'm telling you, man, 3 days of like the right mindset started to transform me, of just like this healing started to happen. So many people prayed for me and prayed for her. And I remember hearing like, when God talks to you, recognize he also talks to your wife. And, you're thinking it's just you and him, but there's her too. And like, start to trust that. So we started to see each other as partners, rather than like opposing forces. And, yeah, a lot of amazing things came from that, man. I mean, now, like we're best friends. We do life together, and the marriage that I almost lost was revived, right?
Amen. That's remarkable. But it wasn't a flip of the switch.
No.
So it took effort. It took pain. It took a transformation. Yeah, a remarkable story. So now, fast forward it, you decide to write a book. You did decide to do Kingdom Operatives, which we're going to talk. But what changed from just focusing on this, like, right? So like I got to fix this.
Yeah.
And now you have a calling to go, hey, I can use everything that was taught to me by the mentors, what I've been reading, how I've transformed, what I've done with my family. I can help other people.
Yeah.
So what was that journey like, where you kind of figured out like, whoa, I still have this. I can go and help people, but it's not going to be, I'm not going to be a consultant. Like I'm not going to be, I'm not helping them in business. I'm helping them in life.
Yeah. I still try to figure out how to explain all that we do, because so my organization, Kingdom Operatives, right? I would say we equip leaders to build mission effective teams. That's like team focused. But before we can do any of that, we got to make that person extremely healthy and in a great state and know clearly who they are before the world told them who to be. And part of that starts with the beginning of, I'm drifting. I don't want to keep drifting. What's causing it? And what do I want next? So like there's this like recovery of like, you're about to crash. Oh, now that we stopped that, let's see what was causing it. Oh, now that we can see what's causing it, we can respond to it. And now that we can respond to it, we can figure out what we want most, which might not be the thing you've been doing, might not be the job you have. It might not be all the things you've been saying are your ambitions. Maybe it's, I want to be super wealthy and I want to take care of my family forever because I want so much money. We never have to worry about it. Maybe eventually you're like, no, actually, that's not a priority to me anymore. All those different things can happen. And then eventually you get to the point of like building them to a whole new level, saying, we got that part. Now we can start to climb. Now that this stuff is in alignment. So I think it's a unique way for me to get to the big point, which is when you're in proper alignment, that's key. Like you got to be properly aligned. Like this is who I am. This is what I do because of who I am. So you have to know clearly who you are. So I had to know this is who Adam is. I started to like journal and like kind of think of, and I would say in prayer, get inspiration of like phrases that described who I was. One of those is, I am a sound of freedom. And that was before that movie ever came out, like I am a sound of freedom. And I've never heard that in my whole life. And I was just kind of like, wow. Now check it out. Because I am a sound of freedom, I need to be speaking. And what's the result I should expect that people get when I show up? Freedom. Why? Because I am a sound of freedom. So when I speak, freedom comes. Oh, I should probably be doing public speaking work. That was the type of shift that started to happen in my mind. And again, through people like Israel and David, right, to point these things out, and communities that I belong to say, when you know who you are, you know what you're supposed to do, then it's just a matter of sharing it with the world and showing up to where you're supposed to be. Your mess becomes your message. The cracks in my armor became something I wasn't embarrassed of because they didn't define who I was. So I'm going to go share them with other people because there's someone just like me right now who is feeling like I felt a couple of years ago and is seeing no way out. And they need someone to say that I can see the drift. And it's okay. That drift doesn't define you. Like, think about this. Usually you find these like radical accountability messages that make you feel like crap, right? And that you're not enough. I think because of the lens that I have and the compassion that's been built, you could be way off. And I want you to know that you are enough, even right there in that moment. Because this isn't who you are. This is where you are. So look, there's no need to beat yourself up, man. You're just making a couple wrong inputs right now that are adding up to this part of your life being where you are. Let's just make the adjustments, get aligned to who we are and what we want to be doing next. And life becomes really simple. So for me, I never I would say I always had such an appreciation for like leaders and books about leadership and stuff. So maybe one day I'd write a book about that, but I didn't have anything to write about. I wasn't pursuing becoming a writer or an author. I was a brand new dad again. This my second kid was born. And I felt like I was supposed to start writing about this. And I was supposed to kind of give like a blueprint or a framework, which I didn't have. I had a whole lot of conversations with people I haven't mentioned to you here. I mean, dude, I was so hungry to be better and to change that I just talked to everyone and anyone. I talked to Bronze Star recipients and Marines and Air Force, and I talked to Guard Reserve. And I started finding all these trends, like, wait, we're way more alike than we think. Everyone always say like, don't go chase that, man. And it was always like about rank or if I could get back or if I would have deployed, do not play that game. It's never enough. I've played the game. It's not enough. So I had all these people telling me that. It was kind of like, then there's something bigger here hurting us. And then that's why eventually I realized that this identity is so powerful. If I'm a protector and a warrior and a defender, then I usually won't do things for me. Because like, it's not really about me. It's about a battle. It's about a person or a group that you're protecting. You see what I'm saying? That's not about us usually. So I wasn't willing to change for me. All the way back to those very beginning conversations, I could see that my wife was tired and it was because of me. I could see that my daughter did not have a strong bond with me at the time. And that wasn't because of her. That was because of me getting in my own way. So I'm going to go to war, the real battle. I mean, like, look, what I would say is there's a real battle right now for the heart and the mind of warriors and protectors. In the course of 14 years from Iraq to Afghanistan war, there was under 7,000 service members killed in action. In the same 14 years, DOD estimates that there was 73,000 service members and veterans who were killed by suicide, right? Killed by themselves. So like, if that's the thing here, then there's a war here. There's something we're fighting against. I wasn't willing to fight it so that I felt better. I didn't really care how I felt. I cared that they were feeling what I felt. So I'll go fight that. And then when I did, and we started to have victory, which you could see in the change of my relationship with my wife, the way our conversation started to open up, a grace and appreciation for one another, me going on daddy-daughter dates, with my daughters, all these different things of like, Adam didn't used to do that stuff. So remember, Adam changed, right? This is not the same guy I married. No, he's better. Man, how cool is that? No, he's better. He's here. Yeah. He's not obsessed with just achieving and impacting. He realizes this is his place of impact too. And he recognizes that life is meant to also be enjoyed. This is the Genesis principle. In scripture, Adam and Eve were put in the garden with God to walk with him, to enjoy it, to take care of a couple things, yes, but also just to like it wasn't really a hard life back then. None of the bad stuff started to come yet. So having this back in the garden kind of mindset of like, that's my present reality again, is I'm allowed to just enjoy sitting outside with my dogs. I'm allowed to just have a beer and like relax. And that's not being unproductive. That's being present. All these things started to change in me. And like I told you, I felt like I was being inspired. Like I felt this like inspiration of like, I got to write about this. I got to share this with someone, and I don't know who, but maybe someone will read this one day. And man, how crazy is this story? Now I'm working with bases. I didn't think a base would listen to a paragraph, and then me with commanding generals who like read the book. That's crazy.
Yeah, I was doing some Google. I don't honestly, with the Tango Tango podcast, I don't overly prepare because I just want the story to go where it goes. But for you, I just let me take a look at what Adam has been up to since the last time we chatted. I was like, holy cow, he's on the Army website, army.mil. And wow. I mean, like the Army used to be anti this stuff, all right? And holy cow. So like one, their mindset's totally changed. And two, you're being transformational. Like let them put all this on their site, that you're going on the basis that the generals reading your book. Man, it's real impact. I'm excited. Again, you're changing the stars for not only service members, but their families. And that is generational kind of stuff. So I'm proud of you. I'm like super proud of you. We're going to get to meet here in it's a month from today.
Wow.
So we'll be at the Military Influencers Conference here in Veteran City, USA, as I call it, Atlanta, Georgia. So I can't wait. And not only can I not wait to meet you in person, I'm looking forward to your discussion that you're moderating, and then I'm really looking forward to connecting you with some of the key players here, and then I want to get more involved with Kingdom Operatives. So I can't wait to have that discussion with you.
Wow.
So I'm excited. I think man, you had to suffer, brother.
Yeah.
You had to suffer, but out of that suffering, and we know the story. And I think amazing things have happened. It's incredible. So we're going to close it out here shortly, but I want part two. I want to get more into it. But if somebody's struggling right now with some of the same issues that you are dealing with, what piece of advice can you offer?
First thought is we may not share a story, but we probably share a struggle. Whether our stories all match perfectly, I think that's what we do wrong. We look for someone who has this perfect matching story to get it. Well, you don't get it because you don't. You don't get it because you don't. You don't. It's like, no. We all are struggling. High performers share a struggle. So if there are other high performers, chances are they get this feeling that you feel. Now, there's different levels to it. But for me, I thought my story didn't qualify my struggle. Dude, I had like a good upbringing. I went to college. I became a Black Hawk pilot. I lived in Colorado. Like the story wasn't qualifying the struggle. You see what I'm saying? I can't think of a time where I was like beaten other than Sears School. I hope I'm allowed to say that.
Me too. I said it. Me too. I got beaten in survival school.
Like I can't think of trauma in my life. And if you remember in the book, I talk about the 4 origins of the weapon. And I think these are the qualifiers, I guess you could say, to help normalize this. One origin is trauma. I did not have, I'm sure there's something, right? There's no doubt there's pieces, but it wasn't like evident. Like, oh yeah, because I was in this combat zone and I saw this. Or because, my parents got in a car accident and I lost them, like those type of things, like nothing, right? So trauma wasn't a thing for me. But then I began to see through all these conversations trends. And I feel like that's just a little bit of how I'm wired, as I can see patterns. And the next thing was training. We were trained to suppress our emotion. We are trained to perform. We are trained that your performance gets you rewards. It makes sense why you feel like you don't want to let anyone down, right? So it's important to recognize these. So trauma, trading, timing, which is like a certain timing of my life. I think by now I should be here type of stuff. That could start to originate some of these struggles. And then another thing is transition. And by the way, that's been the most common thing, Lloyd, when we're going to the bases and stuff, is we're finding, I never saw it coming with this person. Now, this is the suicide side of the conversation, right? We never saw this coming. No one knew this person was struggling. And I'm thinking no one knew I was struggling either, other than maybe my wife and like my mentor, because I hid it from everyone. Because I'm a high performer. I know how to perform. I can turn it on. I can hide it. So what's the thing that we need to look for? In this case, it was this person's going through a transition. Maybe this is an opportunity where we need to be a little bit close to them and take care of them. It could even be a promotion. These transitions are like promotions, getting into special forces, getting a divorce, getting married. These are all different transitions, getting out of the military. That type of stuff can really start to shake up the way you see yourself. And these 4 weapons that I talk about could start to cause people to struggle. So to come back to the question, your story doesn't need to qualify your struggle. You're allowed to have struggle and allowed to drift just because life itself is challenging, and because you're probably someone who puts a lot of weight on your shoulders and requires a lot from yourself. And that's okay to just acknowledge it. So you got to acknowledge it. After that, then you can assess what's causing it and what you want next. And I just want whoever that is, like, to know, like, it is crazy how much you are not alone in this. And I encourage you to start to talk to the people you need to talk to in the smallest steps that you can take. Sometimes it looks so far away, like I got to go say all this, just get it started. And that's kind of where our book comes in, right? Is it's a tool to help have the conversations that people are avoiding.
So great. I appreciate that advice. It's okay not to be okay. Ask for help.
Yep.
And then where can folks find you, Adam?
So kingdomoperatives.com is our website. And in there, they can always schedule a call. We have a community for people who connect to what I'm sharing here. It's a school community. It's like an online platform. So school, SKOOL.com/Kingdom Operatives could bring them into a community, which is really nice because now you're not alone. That's totally free. And people process thoughts about the book in there and all that kind of stuff as well. It's really cool to see the different people from all different walks of life, very, very senior leaders too, and very junior enlisted, recently separated people jumping in all together, being a one. So I think those are some great areas. And then if anyone wants to connect on like LinkedIn, that's Lead with Adam.
The Tango Tango podcast is proudly sponsored by Supply Chain Now. Join the Tango Tango community for more inspiring stories. Follow us on Facebook, X, and LinkedIn. Subscribe to the Tango Tango YouTube channel and follow and listen to Tango Tango wherever you get your podcasts.